Okay, welcome everyone to our second HL7 Australia AU Core Work Group meeting. Obviously, we've been around a long time now as a TDG, but this is our second work group meeting. And I'll kick off with an acknowledgement of country. So HL7 Australia acknowledges and pays respect to the past, present, and future traditional custodians and elders of Australia, and the continuation of cultural, spiritual, and educational practices of Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples. Those, as a reminder, new co-chairs, including myself. Now we're the co-chairs of the work group moving forward. We've been introduced in the previous slide, but this one's just still here, just a reminder of who you can reach out and talk to about anything to do with the AU Core Work Group. You can reach out to any of us on Zoop and chat about things. If you want anything on an agenda item for a meeting, you can reach out to us as well. So usual business and updates. So we basically split the meeting into work group business and then project business. This is a dual meeting between the AU Core Work Group business as well as AU Core Fire IG project. So we'll just do our usual business and updates, which includes approval of minutes and any work group updates and news. And then we'll move into AU Core Fire IG project business. And we've got two key discussion topics today. We've got the AU Core Endpoint proposal and AU Core composition. We had another item on the agenda, which was the address change request, or sort of report back on that. We're not going to have time given the two big topics of endpoint and composition. I think we'd previously identified that address changes as a low priority. So we'll just keep kicking that along and squeeze it into a meeting when we've got a bit more time. We've got reasonably full agendas at the moment, so it'll probably kick that down the road for a few meetings before we come back to that while we work through some more chunky proposals. Kicking into the usual business. So we had our first work group meeting, which was 2 weeks ago. We have some minutes for that now, which I will bring up and I'll paste in the chat. And that's there in the chat. So this was our meeting from 2 weeks ago, which is our first work group meeting. We've got the YouTube recording as well as the PDF of slides. We've got our agenda items. The items we went through. I think we had some decisions in this meeting as well when we got into composition. Yep, we had some motions here about the scope of the AU Core composition profile. We had some discussions. We had another poll about the use of group. And then we had some more motions at the end of this about must support and mandatory elements for composition, must support obligations, and adopting the default AU Core obligation. So Danielle, yep, did you have a comment?
I just, and I haven't provided that feedback on the page. I'm happy for the minutes to be approved, but I'd like us to have an action to do the post-meeting JIRAs of the decisions that were made around AU Core composition, and I'd like those to be like post-inserted into the minutes to say, and this was the JIRA created later, so we have that record associated with each of those.
Yep, that sounds good. So that was around the some of the discussions we had, and then we decided
Yeah,
to create JIRAs, but just linking those back.
exactly. Basically, what you're
Yep.
seeing now, if you just scroll down a little more, there are some decisions that were made in the last call, and we should have JIRAs that record this is the decision that was made, and it will substantively change the IG, and we should track that by a JIRA, and it goes into the change log. And if we could just insert the
Mm.
JIRA when it's created
Yep.
into the meeting minutes.
Yep. No problems. Do that.
Is this related
Um,
to the composition
Yeah,
one?
it is. Yeah.
yeah, so I mean it's a normal process that we do have is that once we sometimes we have a JIRA before we come into a meeting and therefore we're discussing the JIRA there. Other times we make a motion here and we'll create a JIRA out of the decision. so that then it gets implemented in the IG. So we'll create those JIRAs and link them back here.
Yeah.
So,
I don't
so
think
it's
we have
just
a
for
JIRA
completeness.
at all for composition at this stage.
No, that's right. But that's fine. And I mean, again, this is the usual process. We can create those after we've made the decision, just to reflect the decision that was made in this meeting. And we'll link those back here. So noting that one, that amendment, but that shouldn't stop us approving these. Any other comments on this, or any other changes to this? Otherwise, is anyone interested in motioning that we accept these minutes with that amendment that Danielle has noted?
Happy to move.
Thanks, Stephen. Do we have a second?
Happy to second, Yoni. Yeah.
Thanks, Yoni. Got a second. If there are no more comments or questions, I will launch a vote. But for the approval of minutes, it should be this one. Hopefully you'll see that on the screen. If you can't see the electronic vote or vote on it, you can vote in the comments, the meeting chat, or you can call out your name and raise your vote verbally. Got about 60% of people voted. A few more if you can. Still a few. We don't have any bots, so we should all be live people on the call.
It does
Okay,
look
I'll
like
give that
we still have an AI note taker.
We do. Not anymore, we don't. Okay, I'll close that vote in 3, 2, 1 and share that. So we have 14 plus 1 in the chat, 15 affirmative, 0 negative, and 9 abstain. So that motion has passed to accept the meeting minutes. Thank you, everyone. Moving back to other usual business. So HL7 AU technical transition happening. Brett, I think I'm going to throw you under the bus on this one. Are you able to talk a little bit about the meeting invites and the like coming out now from HL7 and our transition there?
Sure. So mainly we are switching over to Microsoft. Yep. So switching over to Microsoft means we've now got a Microsoft calendar to hold events, including all the meetings. That's a shared calendar for all the work group co-chairs to be able to use. So you'll notice that emails and calendar events are all coming through from an account called Workgroups at hl7.au. That does give us the ability to kind of manage those events centrally as well, which helps, if people send rather than individuals sending out meetings, we've got a shared account, so it means that people can move things around as needed and date them. Email lists are in place as well, so they're in use. That's the main things at the moment. We do have a plan to move off Zoom to go to Teams. But there's still a few things to sort out with that. We've got to make sure all our recordings and chat histories and everything are going to be working as we want, and we also have to work on some voting tools to be able to do the polls during the meeting. We haven't got an answer yet. So some groups are already meeting with Teams groups, but this one's probably the largest group, and so we'll probably flag that. There probably will be a drop dead date when Zoom gets turned off, but that's it. Just a month or two to sort this out.
Okay. Thanks, Brett. I think there have been some teething problems as well, where the co-chairs and the like have been having some problems with our meeting invites and getting them out cleanly, and had problems with cancellations and the like. So we'd certainly apologise for that and any confusion it might have caused. But yeah, we're just working through it as well. I think we might have got some invites that went out weekly rather than fortnightly. We've had other ones that have been cancelled. So it's just a bit of teething issue, right, as we work through all of this and get to the new processes. But then hopefully in the long run, we'll be in a much better place with all of this in place. Yeah, hopefully we'll get through that cleanly. Does anyone have any questions about the transition, or any concerns about what you've been seeing come through now and the changes, missing anything? But otherwise, we'll watch this space as we continue that transition with HL7 Australia. Okay, I'll move on to action items. I think these are some outstanding action items from previous meetings. I'm not sure we have any updates on this. The first one, I think, will just be there until we have the terminology work group ready to accept those things. And the second one was Richard, which I think may still be on leave. No further updates there. Yep. So we have no other updates on those action items.
I can just say that the on the second item around discussing relaxation of the constraint on organisation.identifier, we might be able to put it on the agenda of the next AU Core call, because I think there's a prerequisite AU-based discussion talking about how we use identifier types. And that is the main bit for this is coming up next week on Wednesday, because the firework group's in an off week from us. And so the next firework group is going to talk about the prerequisite JIRA for this one. So if that gets approved from the firework group, then we could discuss it in the following week for AU Core. So maybe Ricardo or someone from the agency could just email or put it on the agenda for the next AU Core call.
I need to check if Richard is back, Danielle. I think he might not be back for the next one yet.
I mean, maybe Uday could talk to it, because I know Richard handed over a bunch of the identifier stuff to Uday. If he's
I'll check.
available. Yep.
Okay. Other updates. So Spark Community Co-Design workshops are coming up in Brisbane on 27th, 28th of May. There's clinical design group, and we're going to have an AU Core work group. These are focused around Encounter Record, which is a follow-up to the one we ran in Hobart earlier this year. I don't have the latest numbers on this, but the tickets are selling out fast and there's not a lot left. So if you are interested in coming along to this, please register as soon as possible to make sure you get a ticket. Certainly from the technical side, we've got day 2, but you may get a lot of useful information out of the clinical group day as well, given they're related. And both talking about Encounter Records. So if you've got any interest in this, please register for these days. Hi, Danielle.
I mean, we've got Maddie on the line. Do we have some updated numbers for this? How much space is left?
We sure do. So for day 1, I have 3 tickets remaining. And for day 2, I'm at 11. So we definitely have space. And if you would like to attend and the tickets are sold out, please, please, please join the wait list. I check that multiple times a day and do try to get as many tickets out and above what our original allocation was. So please just join the wait list if there's none left.
Thanks, Maddie. Okay, another one, the Spark testing event. We had an EOI earlier this year to talk about interest in having us people attending a Spark testing event. So that EOI was what dates were you looking at, what city are you interested in? So I think we've now have that locked in as going to be a Brisbane event on the 8th of July. We'll be sending out some comms on that early next week to look at registration if you're looking at requesting registration for that. So watch this space. But yeah, we do have a date, 8th of July in Brisbane, and we'll send out some comms early next week on that. So keep an eye on your inbox if you want to come along. And this was across all spectrums: AU Core, patient summary, e-requesting, smart forms, Health Connect Australia provider directory. So if you're looking at testing across, we're trying to do some testing scenarios, hopefully across multiple IGs rather than just staying in your silo. So yeah, if you're interested, keep an eye out for the registration comms coming out shortly. Okay, so that's the end of the workgroup business. Now we're moving into AU Core FireIG project business. And I think, Danielle, you might be able to talk to a couple of these slides to give us an update on some AU Core Fire project stuff.
Yes, that's me. Next slide. Okay, so we're almost done with the diagnostic report vendor support page, but could you just click on that, Michael, just quickly, just to show people that, well, we got some good response in Zulip around who's implementing and what have they implemented. We also went out to ask some more detailed information to make sure that the initial proposal that comes out, which is Corey from Epic is putting that together, reflected, I think, really what people had been implementing in their systems. And, ooh, can I just check, Ricardo, how are you guys going in putting together a response to this page? Because I know that you said that you would be able to update that.
Yeah, I looked at it, but I then saw vendor support, so I couldn't see how that relates to us. So I assume this was specific for vendors.
Oh, I thought in relation to like My Health Record, because there's a diagnostic report shared by default to the My Health Record. But that's okay. That's that's a separate thing. I was
Yeah,
having a chat with Corey about that.
I saw Tim's message, but I wasn't too sure how, especially looking at all the responses we got in there, why it would make sense to have MHR in there. But happy to take that offline if needed.
Yep, no, I mean, no, that's fine. I was just following up on something because I know Corey's not on the line today. So this page is there if you have support for diagnostic report in your systems, whether it's Fire or not, and you want to contribute to this to help Corey put together a proposal that is really reflective of what systems are currently sharing. If you could edit this page, that would be really helpful, because we're about to go into talks about diagnostic report, and the proposal will be out like really soon. I think the last slide for today is talking about the schedule. So I just want to say it's like a last call for like for the end of this week to do that. Also, then on next slide, we have the AU Core composition proposal. Some of that's already been talked through, and there'll be more of that today. A whole bunch of information sessions have been done, which were really interesting. There has been vendor support page as well. If you want to keep contributing to that, you absolutely can. And but I think today is like the last planned kind of session on AU Core composition. So we've got quite a few, I think. Yep, there it is. All right. And can you go back to the slide? Because then there's another one around document reference, which we haven't started talking about yet. And that's actually, well, I mean, we haven't started doing the planning for in the work group meetings. There's already been an information session. There's going to be another one this Friday. Hopefully you have that in your calendars. If not, there's the information on the slides. And that was also a really good session around document reference and how we want to use that and what does it mean to put it in AU Core. Are we like addressing clinical notes? Are we, how are we supporting like search for documents and other things? So I'm looking forward to the discussions on that, which I think start in our next AU Core call is where the proposal for document reference will start to come through. So if you're not familiar with document reference, you can either attend this Friday's info session and ask your questions, or just have a look at the already like recorded info sessions that have kind of walked through what is it and what does it do. Next slide.
Shelley, I might get you to, if you can, put some of those links in the chat too. People, I think the last one.
All right, so we've got a couple of polls out that impact AU Core R3. That first one, name of the composition profile, which I think is a sneaky way of scoping, really. So I think there was a lot of discussion in the last call around composition, how we're scoping it, what does it all mean. So there's a poll out to ask for people's preference on what do they actually want to call the profile, so it's actually really clear to people. So that's there. Indicate it if you can. And if you don't,
Yeah,
you
I
can
think.
just live with
Sorry,
whatever
Tanya.
we decide to name it.
I think it was there was a very deliberate ploy by Heath that we didn't name it when we were scoping.
Yeah.
So we actually went through scope and we did make some decisions on scope, but now we're going back to talk about name because we knew the name is kind of scoping, right? As you suggested.
Yeah. If you care, vote. If you don't care, you can live with the decision that other people have made. Next one. I think there's a second poll. Yes, good. Okay, group resource. This is also related to AU Core composition. So there's been a couple of conversations really around the scoping of our resources and in terms of like things around clinical documents, which are we scoping this to just patient, like we have the rest of the individual resources in AU Core, or is there any reason we would want to consider widening that to include a group resource? So there's a poll there to kind of understand, has anyone implemented group or is anyone looking to implement the group resource in order to kind of inform that decision? So those are the two that are out at the moment.
Okay.
I think that's it.
I think that might be the end of those updates.
Yep.
And now we're looking at the agency doing the AU Core Endpoint proposal. Ricardo, was that you or is that Stuart?
It's Stuart.
Or...
Stuart.
Stuart, are you happy to share?
Yeah, that's okay. Thank you.
Yeah. I'll stop and you should be able to take it.
Alrighty, that should have come through, I hope.
Yep.
Thanks, everyone. We are back again with the endpoint proposal for AU Core and now AU Base. We've been through this a couple of times with community here, but obviously people will come and go, people are on leave and people are busy. So a quick recap here is that we're proposing to include endpoint in AU Core R3. Some discovery for that led to us finding that we also need an endpoint profile for AU Base and then to derive that down through Core. And then we will maintain backwards compatibility with our SMD work and provider directory, all of those kind of things as well. So I'm going to put some links in the chat as well, so that we can have a look through our feedback mechanisms and then the current build we have for Base, which I'll get to in a minute as well. So currently we are using AU Endpoint within a couple of our other IGs, but it's been noted that we need to have a proper AU Endpoint in Core, but to derive that properly, we need the endpoint in Base as well. So this has come from community feedback, and then we can allow for consistent terminology and value sets and reuse the profile in other areas instead of deriving it from different places around the FHIR IGs. So this is the structure that we put up last time we were here for AU Base, the extensions that we're using and the wording and the cardinality around those extensions as well. So we have put a build up now for base on our agency build.fire. Let me bring that up. Apologies. There we go. So this is live. The links are in the chat. You can go and have a look for the base proposal that we have for endpoint. And then we're welcoming feedback on both base and core. However, we came to a bit of a sticking point over the last couple of days when with core, and that is because we put AU base up in a branch, we cannot build core because it can't derive the AU endpoint extension from a branch of base, only from main of base. So we're going to have to get this one approved before we can put the build up for core for everybody to have a look at. But the link for the base is in the chat for everybody to have a look at, along with the Confluence and the Zulip poll as well. I've got Sam and Ricardo with me here today, who have been a lot of help in developing this work as well. So if anybody's got any sticky questions, please feel free to stick them in the chat or yell them out, and we can have a look at those as we go. So looking at core, which is the main crux of what we're looking at here, this is derived from the profile that we've put up on base. I've had to split this into 2 slides just because it's a little bit large and will be a little bit squishy. So starting with the slices, we have the receiving facility, receiving application, environment type, encryption certificate, and IG supported. Those have been derived from a few different areas around our agency fire IGs and a few other IGs that are out there, including PD and a couple of other main IGs that we have for the agency. And then we have the standard endpoint ones down here that we've set up the cardinality and must support and obligations for as well, being core. And then these are the same that are in base as well. So we wanted to also draw notice to payload types. Payload types we're originally going to borrow from provider directory on FireR4. But Sam raised a good point yesterday that it's probably best to include this as part of base instead of deriving this from AU PD. PD is an agency project, but it's not as widely maintained at the moment as it's an ongoing project. And it is likely to sort of come and go as we do work on this. But the actual content of this is, sorry, HL7 project. Thank you, Danielle. But the content is important. We need it for endpoint itself. So Sam suggested that we move this back into AU base itself, and then PD can derive this from base or core, and then so can endpoint as well. Sam, if I've missed anything, please feel free to jump over the top of me on that. I'll show you the build for that and where it sits. I'll put that in the chat as well so people can come and have a look at what we're talking about here. Okay, cool. Thanks, Danielle. Appreciate that. So we might speak to you offline just about the best way to go about that, and then we can look at how we can do that and see what community thinks about that. But if anybody's got any immediate comments, as always, please let us know. So if anybody wants to have a look, we've got the base build.fire up. There's a QR code here for you guys. I've also put the links in the chat as well. So we are seeking feedback, of course, through Confluence or Zulip, whatever works for anybody, or you can email me as well if you want, and just send me your feedback directly. But that's essentially where we're at the moment. So I'm sure that there is a few people in here with some questions and some comments. I know that we haven't got a whole lot of time for people to do a cursory review, but happy to review this later as well. Danielle says, when will the PSS for the next AU PD come through to the AU Fire Working Group is a great question if anybody has the answer.
Next week at this stage, Danielle. So I'm expecting Sam, who's actually in the call, has drafted it, but because I haven't been doing my role for a bit, I'll try to get back to this next week. So hopefully next week we can bring it for discussion.
All right, if you could email the co-chairs for that, and then we can advertise to the community that would be discussed at the next. So hang on, the next firework group. Yeah, okay. Yes, we would want enough time to advertise to the community that this would be discussed, so that they could ask questions if they have any.
Right. can look, if you think it's a bit too close to the next meeting, I'm happy for it to come the meeting after. But what I'll try to do is before the end of the day tomorrow, I'll just well, I mean, I can send you an email and ask for a time slot at the meeting
Mhm.
next week. I can share the draft as it is. If you think
I
that's
mean,
enough time,
it just
yeah.
is an agenda topic. You don't actually have to send the PSS through
Okay.
just to say that you want to speak to it at the next week. That I think that would be fine. And then we could just alert the
Yep.
community that the PSS, when it's ready, is what we'll talk about next Wednesday. I think that
Yeah.
would
Okay.
work just fine.
Okay. Cool. Will do. Thank you.
Cool. Thank you. Sam's just clarified in the chat for me as well that if PD was to derive from core, there would be a lot less work for PD to do as all of the work cascades through from core and base as well. So we'll put all of that into some documentation and get that through, and we'll set that up for when community can have some time to review that one. And then next steps from here. So hopefully bringing that back on the 22nd of the firework group. And then we'll submit for voting on the 6th, and we'll submit for voting to core AU Core on the 14th of May. Happy for any questions or comments, or to go back through slides, back to the build, wherever it is that anybody wants me to go.
Danielle.
So this is with my firework group hat on. I think the PSS is probably a short agenda item. We can fit it in, but the rest of the agenda for the next meeting is already booked, and it doesn't include endpoint. So we might have to talk offline with the
Sure.
firework group co-chairs about when we can put it in. I don't think we can fit it in on the 22nd of April. Yeah.
If we can't, we can't. I'll reach out to you offline. We can see what we can do.
Yeah.
If not, then I'll work with Ricardo and Sam to see when we can get that on the agenda. Sure.
Yeah, that sounds good. I'd like to put it in as soon as possible. We've had some other email requests saying please put this on the agenda for the next firework group meeting, and so those are in. And I think by the time we go through those, I I don't think we'll have a chance to actually vote on the endpoint. I think, we might be able to socialize it, but I don't know that we'd get to a decision.
If we can socialize it, that would be something. We're not saying voting till 6th of May to give community time to review from firework groups, so I don't think that would be the end of the world. So yeah, I'll reach out to you offline. We'll see what we can do.
Yep, that sounds good.
Thank you.
Thanks, Stuart. So just to recap what we've gone through here today. So you've got a draft branch which has the AU base proposal in it,
Yes.
and that will go through the firework group for inclusion in AU base, including looking at that value set that was in provided directory. And then so we don't have a branch at the moment for core because of the dependency issues, which would be the same problem if we were trying to implement in core anyway, right? We have to do base first because we have to derive from it and move through that. So basically, you're going to need the proposal to go through firework group for base, get accepted, get implemented, and then we can have a draft branch for core where we can talk about the must supports and the obligations on those.
Absolutely.
Yep.
Yeah.
Danielle,
I tried everything I could, but it refuses
yeah,
to
no,
build.
it makes sense. We're going to have the same dependency issues when we go to implement, right? So, yeah, Danielle, did you want to
I
clarify?
would like to suggest that there are, noting that the next two AU core meetings, it looks like to me their agenda is totally full. But I I don't think we have to wait on some decisions for AU Core. Like the choice of things to put must support on don't require like a technical implementation into base because as far as I can understand, the things that you're putting into base are the extensions, but you don't want to put must support on the extensions. You just want to put them on the native elements of endpoint. So they already exist. So we can totally have the discussion about my support. We can totally have the discussion about cardinality. And we can even talk about what would be the preferred terminology, understanding that there's still a prerequisite of a firework group discussion. So I think we can do all of those. We've done it before in AU Core, where we've talked about things that we then say, look, AU Core wants this, and we push it to core to base, sorry, to say, look, this is actually a requirement from us, and if base accepts it, great, and if they push back, then we bring it back to the core work group to say, look, here's some of the feedback, and we might need to revise our decision. But I think we can make all the from what I can see, I think we actually can decide all the normative stuff that you've proposed in AU Core, realizing there's a prerequisite to actually author it into the IG.
Sure. Okay. Yeah, that works for me.
Yeah.
If everyone else, yeah. Cool. Let's do
I think
that.
that makes sense. I mean, we've seen some of the proposal he's been pulling through, and that we've just had slides to say these are the must supports, and on the elements we don't necessarily need the branch there to do that if that's the case. So yeah, I think there's options there. So that sounds good. We'll just need to look to get that on an agenda item for one of the meetings too. Noting, yeah. So I think Ricardo, yeah, you might be able to talk to that.
No, just going to ask. So in terms of the Confluence page, then are you happy for us to, we can have the links to the browsable versions that you can navigate through, but then I guess for the AU Core we can just chuck in there the proposal, in a PowerPoint or whatever format, and people can still, I guess, see it all come together, but probably not as as nice as if you could put everything in build.fi.org, I guess.
Well, that's effectively what I've done in my Confluence pages as well, Ricardo.
Yeah.
So it's just
okay.
that, just in tables.
Yep.
Yeah, I'll update this to make it work that way around.
Yep. Cool.
Okay. So that sounds good. So yeah, I think if you want to request that for a future meeting, we'll work out what we can fit in the future schedules for these meetings as well.
Great. Well, thank you. Appreciate it.
Okay. Does anyone else have any questions about the endpoint we want to talk about today? Yeah, Ricardo.
I should actually know the answer to this question, but my memory is failing me at the moment. So what's the drop dead date for all of this work for R3? So what's the latest? And maybe Danielle, you have this on the top of your mind. So what's the latest things need to be in?
Is Brett on the line just to remind me of when? Okay. So, oh, you are on the line. Now, Brett, I don't remember, and it'd be great if you could put it in the fire working group calendar when our ballot voting period we kind of agreed was, but it's in August.
Okay.
And so prior to that, we have to agree AFMM1, which means whatever work we've done has to be in the IG, has to be reviewed. We have to accept any of the like errors or warnings that are there, which, sometimes happen due to environmental issues and it's nothing to do with what you've actually done. But we have to agree that what is present is like substantially complete enough to trial implement, basically.
Yep.
And so that I think is at the very latest July, early July, we would want to have something already agreed and published in the IG and be trying to talk through the AFMM1 discussions in July so that we can publish and go to ballot in August. Yeah.
Yep. Okay. Cool.
So there's space. There's just not that much for all the work that I'm seeing everyone want to come in and do around medication dispense and then endpoint and diagnostic report and document reference. There's a lot of stuff going on.
Yep. That's agreed. All right. Thanks for that.
Okay. Stuart, I think the slide pack that we're going through today doesn't have your latest slides in it. So I might just get you or Ricardo to just update our meeting slide pack. So when we put them in the minutes, we've got all the latest ones you went through today for everyone.
Yeah, I'll absolutely get that through. I left it till last minute trying to get core to build last night.
Oh,
so
yeah. Absolutely. That's fine. we'll just get that updated, and then we'll put those in so they're in there for the minutes.
Cool. Thank you.
Anything else from anyone on Endpoint before we move on to the next agenda item? No, that sounds
Actually,
good.
I would like to expand that question. So just can we zoom in a bit because this is a bit small for me.
Absolutely can. If I push the right button. There we go.
Yeah, so these are the proposed must supports.
Mhm.
For the people on the line, and I know there's a few that have said that they actually use Endpoint. Is there anything missing there that we should be considering in terms of like putting a must support on already? Like, does this satisfy your use case for using Endpoint?
There's nothing after address either. So I'll keep that there so you can see everything.
Do you have a comparison to the AUPD spec? Like, are there any additional must supports in AUPD versus what's proposed here?
Let me just see if I can pull something up quickly. Bear with me 2 seconds.
The other question I have is about the mandatoriness of all those fields. I don't have any experience implementing endpoints, so I can't comment personally, but I would like to ask others that do whether they are truly mandatory.
One thing I was going to bring up as well is because I was looking at this yesterday is the NHS Direct endpoint Fire IG has less must supports than this.
That's interesting. Yeah.
Which one? The NHSD?
Yeah,
Yeah, I think that needs to be a comparison as well.
yeah.
Could you put together, Stuart, on the Confluence page, maybe a comparison with PD and NHSD in this proposal?
Yeah, I don't see why not. That should be okay.
Because I
Just
think
for
that's really what
clarity,
yeah.
on the right here is the PD. This is the SMD endpoint, and on the left is our core proposal of must supports.
hmm That's interesting. So identify SMD target is, yep, mandatory. Okay. Yep.
Name is not.
Mm.
Managing org is. I mean, someone was talking about contact. I think it might have been Brett the other week as being important for, not to say it's mandatory, but um, for being able to, you know, I guess negotiate if I want to connect to it, but there's extra bits and pieces that are not in the endpoint that I need to know who do I contact. So that managing org and contact may be something that's useful. But whether it's core.
Is there increased mandatoriness, like around name, coming out of the HCA provider directory profile?
Yeah, that's a good question.
I believe Sam. I think that was a mandatory element in HCAPD, right? If you're still on the line.
He's still here, typing furiously in the back end. I'll let you know shortly.
You can come off mute while we.
He's having mic trouble. There we go. Type furiously, Sam. I'll read it out.
Oh, I can check. Yeah, it's mandatory. No, it's actually not mandatory. So I don't. Yeah. So yeah, it's actually not mandatory on the provider directory for IG. So maybe this one actually flew under the radar.
And
We can review for sure.
And have we had vendor feedback on what they do implement as well? Because that's the other sort of process that we usually use to get, what have the vendors actually implemented or implementations actually implemented?
Not directly outside of this discussion.
No, I think we had a Zulip poll, didn't we? I think,
Yeah.
Ricardo, you put together a Zulip
Just
poll
as well.
asking
Yeah.
people what they implement, and I don't remember the results of it, but it did ask like with these elements and on what people did, didn't it?
That was at the element level, was it?
It was mostly focused on the fire type of endpoint, so we didn't go into the detail of this. The other elements, so the focus was mostly on the connection type, or the payload type. One of them being a fire. I think connection type is probably the one I'm talking about. But yeah, but names definitely. It doesn't seem right being mandatory. And maybe we'll need to take that away and just double check, Stuart, because yeah, it's also not mandatory on the Health Connect Fire IG.
Yeah, happy to.
Okay.
Okay.
If Stuart, maybe you just put in the chat again the link to the Confluence page. That's probably a good starting point for anyone to provide any feedback on this around that. But you'll look to do some updates and maybe some comparisons on that page. But I think that's the opportunity for people to now take away from this, have a good look, provide comments on that page. I think would be a good place for us to capture any of this feedback as well.
Yeah. I'll get Confluence updated with those comparisons so we can see for sure.
Okay. We might move on to the next agenda item, which Heath is you on composition. Do you want to share for that?
Yeah, I will.
And you've got, what have we got? You got 35 minutes, maybe a couple more before we close out the meeting.
Okay. So this is a continuation from last meeting around AU Core composition. I guess I'll just introduce this again around principles of inclusion in AU Core. These were things that we agreed on when we started working on R1 and R2. Primarily what we're looking to do is bring items into scope based on a set of principles that were based on the area of whether it was a requirement in AU CDI, community interest, as well as being able to get consensus within our TDG, now working group processes within the release timeframes, and that's the key item here. We've heard about how we don't really have a huge amount of time left, a couple of months until this has got to be pushed through, and also that it's supported in other IGs around the place. We were referencing things like US Core and IPS and IPA, but in this last discussion, we were talking about other things like HCA and NHSD and the like. So all those other other IGs are good examples of something being useful. So in that context, we did spend some time at over our information sessions and also last meeting where we actually got a in principle agreement around the scope of the AU Core composition profile. That it provides the minimum expectations around generating, storing, discovering, and viewing clinical documents for a subject of care within Australia. And it's basically providing the data requirements that underpin AU patient summary and other clinical documents that may be produced in Australia going forward. We also agreed on the set of mandatory elements and must support elements. So the items on the screen here are what we did go through last meeting and agreed on. And we also agreed that the must support obligations would just use the default set of AU Core obligations for responder and requester being populate if known and no error for the requester. So that's where we got to last meeting. Any questions at this point before I move on to new content? No? Okay. So the next step was to get agreement on the reference type constraints that we have in our AU Core or to the AU Core profiles. So what we're talking about are a few the items in the right-hand column. I'll just go through them one by one. So looking at subject through the information sessions, the original proposal was to include AU Core patient. But through the information sessions, there was some feeling that the idea of being able to have documents around multiple subjects of care, which would be represented as a group because the subject is 0 to 1. So you can't just have multiple patients. You need to actually use the group resource to support those sorts of references to a subject of the composition. So I'd just like to sort of open that up to some discussion, and I guess we will get to probably a group position of agreement at the end of going through all these items in the right-hand column, but any discussion on this particular item?
Talvinder here. I would like to understand the scenario where we're thinking to use group within the composition. My assumption is if we are taking or talking about the health summary document, it belongs to a patient, particular patient.
Yeah, I'll get Stephen to probably talk to that because he was the one that was advocating for it. I mean, keeping in mind this is a generic or a core concept of composition, and it is not necessarily that we need to support all use cases where we are supporting AU Core use cases, which is very patient centric. But also we're not actually looking at a particular downstream IG. So patient summary will constrain this further back to just patient, but this proposal would be inclusive of other types of clinical documents that do include groups. My personal opinion is that there's a lot of exchange of clinical documents at the moment are in the context of a single patient, and that's the way our systems in Australia are very much single patient centric. But I'll leave Stephen to provide that use case you're asking for, Talwinder.
Thank you, Heath. So I raise this as a desirable entity to add to the composition subject because there are a number of use cases, in particularly behavioral science use cases and also domestic violence or sexual abuse use cases where there are group therapies being convened with clinical notes being captured against a group. And because of the sensitivity nature and privacy requirement of those clinical scenarios, it has been communicated in the past to very strongly that the group needs to be supported with the possibility of identifying individual members in the group, but also have the ability of not identifying the individual members in the group in the case of group therapy where privacy, confidentiality are paramount. Otherwise, you leave a group of subject of care not supported as a result of not able to include a group in the requirement. So that's and that's not just Australia. That's also international as well, where the those stakeholders group have communicated very strongly for the need of that support.
So I'll just put the group up for those that aren't familiar with the group resource. So this is, I think, an R5 version of it. I'm not sure. I'll quickly go to R4, sorry. So basically we're talking about this member group here that then has a entity reference. The member repeats with the entity, got periods and the like. So in here we've got patient practitioners, practitioner role, device, medication, substance groups. So we can have groups of groups, et cetera, et cetera. So that's what we're talking about adding support for in here. To
Danielle's got a hand up there.
go ahead, Daniel. Sorry, I'm not watching the list.
That's okay. I had just put it up, so I didn't wait long. So what what I'm assuming, and I've talked to a few people about this, so group scenarios like Stephen outlined are the real things around which we might want to exchange documents. They're also probably more common in certain regional areas and for different types of healthcare settings. But what what I was thinking is that so there's a particular encounter and it has like a group of people in it. Um, in terms of a sharing scenario, I was thinking that what would probably be exchanged still is that record with the composition associated with the patient rather than the group. Um, and so while the clinical information system would say there are multiple people at this encounter, the I'm then going to exchange information about this encounter or this particular thing would probably still be satisfied in terms of how we currently have implementations and it could still work for future scenarios of just having patient. Um, so I think we can still satisfy group scenarios by just having patient.
Danielle, when I was working in Queensland Health some years ago, there were a specific group of stakeholders that came to the table of discussion at Queensland Health. They specifically articulate that use cases where they want to report on the group and not report on individuals. So it's not just about when you need to communicate the information you can communicate on patient, but there is this specific stakeholder requirements that deals with behavioral science, that deals with sexual abuse, that deals with family domestic violence. Those kind of stakeholders have made it categorically clear that when we are talking about reporting within the Queensland Health sort of a scenario, that they don't want the ability, or they don't want to clearly identify the patient, but just want to
Um,
identify the group as a whole. So there
well,
is actually a specific requirement that I remember very clearly when I was chairing those kind of discussions.
I mean that's I mean I totally agree that's obviously I mean it is a use case. I don't think anyone disagrees with that. Um, AU Core doesn't do it though. All of AU Core's documentation require an identified patient. I think that I think we're talking about population health or maybe bulk data export or secondary stuff, which I don't think we've really got into yet on how could we use the basis of AU Core conformant resources to support that secondary case. So I don't think we're there yet. Yeah.
Well, it was argued that it's primarily used for reporting purposes and not for population health statistics. So, look, I mean, I have articulated the use cases. I'm happy to let the general consensus decide the outcome, but it can't be
I mean,
ignored that those kind of use cases specifically exist. And if we do not support our group in this construct, then we are actually excluding specifically the reporting requirement of clinical works that involve those kind of groups where the individuals do not want to be identified.
and I agree with that. I think that we should record that exactly as you said it in the minutes, so that we're really clear that if we scope this to patient, that absolutely is the current kind of scoping down of this and one of the limitations. Yeah.
And my original scope actually had an individual rather than a subject of care. And we generalized, so basically viewing a clinical documents for an individual within the Australian context. So that could actually be a minor change to the scope that we agreed on last week. To help with that, obviously there is, again, more detail in what Stephen just said around we're not supporting the reporting requirements of an unidentified or I can't remember exactly what you're saying, but basically what you said, Stephen, as a misuse or an exclusion of scope. My concern is that there's a lot of work to do unless we just simply reference the group. But as I was showing before, that then includes all sorts of other references that we can include into this. And to actually use this even just in the context of a group of patients, we would have to then create an AU base, or maybe not an AU base, but at least an AU core profile of group for just patients. And I don't think going back to the scoping space, we have the time to actually do that. We already have a fairly full agenda. So my preference at this point would be to exclude group from this. If there's any sort of other than Stevens sort of indicated his preference, but also said he would be happy to go with the consensus. Danielle.
I'm not sure this is useful, but I mean, I'll say so. AU base, I think, allows group. Um, I think IPS doesn't. We'd have to look at that. Fire documents does for composition, but we wouldn't necessarily have to change every AU core profile to allow group, like allergy. You could do it across group, but you don't have to, because what you would be doing is collecting them across a set of patients. Now, all of that being said, and I don't even think to allow it to include group, we would need to profile it. We've got heaps of things we allow, like look at author. We don't have a profile of device, but we still allow device. So we don't have to profile it. Now, that being said, I think there's been enough request for clarification around how composition is used that I think it's really a good position to scope it to AU Core patient. And then if we have some clear requirements and use cases later on, we could either open it up to group or have a separate profile that deals with group. So I'd be quite comfortable with that.
So you're suggesting leaving the scope as it currently is, as generally to a subject of care, but then scope this to patients so that we've got the possibility of including it later.
Um, are you now talking about the name of the profile that we have a poll on?
No, not the naming. I'm talking about that scope. So whether we want to update the scope back to individual or whether just to leave it as a subject of care and we keep it to just scoping the reference to patient.
Yes, that
That
would be
keeps
my
it open.
preference. Yeah, that would be my preference.
Yep, I'm happy with that.
Okay.
Any
So why do we want to rename it from subject back to individual?
We're
So
not.
can't subject be a more generic, because subject is a more generic concept, can't it remain as is?
That's what we just agreed. We'll leave it as is. That gives us the ability to bring back group if in this profile if we choose.
Okay, that's fine then. I thought that it was, the motion was, or the discussion was pivoting towards sort of a changing back to individual. If
I
that's
did
not the case, then that'll be fine.
I did suggest that and got clarification from Danielle, and Danielle basically said let's leave it and just scope it down in the reference here.
Okay. So yeah, not proposing any change to that definition of scope we had before, but it feels like we've come to a point now. Is anyone interested in making a motion here?
Do we want to do a motion now or a motion as a group
No,
of
let's motion
these?
now. Like,
Yeah,
Yeah, I
let's
think
I
do it
think
as we
let's
go.
finish the conversation. Yeah.
yeah, I think this issue is important enough to have an individual motion of its own.
Happy with that. I'll motion that basically the subject reference to an AU core patient only.
Okay. Is anyone interested in seconding that motion?
Danielle, I'm happy to second.
Okay, thanks. Is there any more discussion comments on that before I launch a poll on that motion? No? Okay, I'll launch a vote for the motion to have subject reference AU core patient only. If you can't vote on electronic vote, please put your vote in the chat or call out your name and your vote as well. Reasonable number there. Just give it another 3, 2, 1. End the poll. We have 18 plus 1 in the chat, 19 affirmative. We have 1 negative, and we have 4 abstain. Stephen, was that your negative in the?
Yes,
have to
I'm
say?
the one
Yeah.
who
Yep.
voted negative, and I have
Yep.
stated my case, so I don't need to elaborate anymore.
No,
Thank
that's
you.
right, and we'll capture that in the minutes around this. So thanks, Stephen. So the motion has passed.
Cute. So author is the next one. So I'm basically proposing that we constrain the referenced types for author to AU core profiles such as practitioner, practitioner role, patient, related person, and AU core organization. The one that we don't have a profile for an AU core is device, and hence leaving that one as a option to reference a device as the author, but just to the via core device at this point in time. Now, this aligns with the way that IPS works, where it has references to various IPS, and it also aligns with AUPS references as well.
So we've already voted this as must support, right?
Yes.
And we have principles that say that for every element that's must support, we apply the referencing for AU Core. This is a given for me, so I motion that that's accepted. I don't even think there's anything to discuss. That's how we model AU Core.
In that case, I think we're also looking at a tester party and
Yeah,
custodian. So would you
yeah,
be willing to motion all three?
absolutely. As a block vote, for those elements that are must support, we apply the AU Core modeling, which we've already agreed in principle, and it's documented in the AU Core Fire IG on how we deal with references. Um, where if there's an AU core profile, we reference the AU core profile. If there's not, we fall back to AU base, and if there's not, we fall back to the fire standard, which is why author has device, because neither AU core nor base have a profile for it. And that's just what we do for everything that's must support. So I think yeah, let's do a block vote on that.
I'm happy to second
Danielle.
that.
Okay, so we have a motion and we have a second. So Danielle has motion. We have Heath has seconded that. Can I just clarify then that there is actually no changes to these references? These are just inherited references, and we're not constraining these
No,
any
we are
further.
we're constraining them in AU Core as per our agreed modeling principles to be AU Core.
Oh, sorry.
So, yeah, we're
Poor
applying
choice of
AU
words
Core
from.
referencing principles.
We haven't removed any types from this,
Yes,
like
that's
we
right.
did with subject, where we removed some. This is the full list. There's none removed. We just made sure we're using AU Core profiles, and where they're available. So
Yes,
I'm
that's
happy with
right.
that
So it's
clarification. Yeah.
just to clarify for people on the line who might have not have been there for the principal kind of how do we model discussion. Wherever there's an AU Core profile, we list that as the reference. If there's not, we fall back to base. There's a couple of places in AU Core where we do that, like diagnostic report, for example. We don't yet have an AU Core profile. Um, it doesn't apply here, but so we have like a fallback principle. We got AU Core. If that doesn't exist, fall back to base. If that doesn't exist, fall back to the fire standard, which is why the author element in particular just has device, because neither core nor base have a profile for device.
So on the screen, we've got practitioner role, device, patient, related person, and organization. So other than device, we've just upgraded all of those or constrained those to AU Core ones.
Mm-hmm.
For a tester party, we've got again patient, related person, practitioner role, and organization. Again, we've just constrained all of those to core and custodian as an organization. What we're actually looking at here is AU base, which doesn't do any constraints on things except for bindings and extensions. So they are in alignment with AU base, constrained to AU core profiles.
Great. Thank you. So we have the motion, we have the second. Does anyone else have any comments or question on this before I launch the vote? No. No. Oh, relaunch this one.
Michael,
Oh, yes, Tawanda.
have we changed the cardinality as well? One to many? Or it was before? I think the author before
We
adding device was optional.
we already agreed on the mandatoriness last week.
Yeah, that was in the previous meeting. Yeah, last week's
Yes.
meeting. Or last fortnight's meeting.
Cool.
So yeah, we're only talking about the references here.
But it is mandatory in AU base and fire core.
Okay. I will watch the vote. Now we've had about 50% of people vote, so we just need a few more people to vote if they can. Okay, getting close now. Okay, give it another 3, 2, 1. I will end that poll. And we have 16 plus 1 in the chat, 17 affirmative, 0 negative, and 5 abstain. So that motion has passed. Thank you.
So time check 10 minutes.
Yeah, you might have a couple more. We've only just got a next meeting slide, so that's the only thing left
Okay.
on the agenda.
Thank you. Okay, so now we move into bindings, in particular on the type element. So in AU base, we have a inherited binding of via document type codes from via core. It's a preferred binding. It's defined as all Loic codes where in Loic terms, the scale type is doc, so document types, and that resolves to 12,000 concepts, which includes some of those on the right. It also includes patient summary. The only FHIR document type that we currently have IGs for is the patient summary. So this is the one that we have in the AU patient summary implementation guide. That's the only low-end code that we currently have in a IG. Now, I'm happy to be standard corrected on that. But I'm talking about composition types, not necessarily document types. So there's a slight perhaps wording issue here in the naming of the of this particular value set. And I guess what I'm referring to is some of the work that's been done in the e-requesting IG, that there is a document type that's used, but that's for the document reference, not for the composition resource. So as a result, what I'm proposing for the AU Core composition is that we have a new value set of AU FHIR document type codes, which initially only has one value in it. And we can add additional values to it as we require within Australia. And for example, if we have an encounter record that is implemented using a composition resource, then we might choose to use the summary of episode note code from Lowing and bring that into this value set. And we could also define include values from other coding systems, knowing that the digital agency has a coding system for various document types in the My Health record. So if they migrate to composition resources in the future, we could leverage some of those other coding systems and include those into this same value set. Now this would be defined in AU base, I would expect, but that's for, I guess, the FHIR working group to decide. But it would be my suggestion that AU Core would push this up to FHIR or across now, across to FHIR IG, FHIR working group to create this new value set and then update the binding within the AU base composition to use this new value set as its preferred binding instead of the one that is currently inherited from FHIR Core. And then in our AU Core composition, the binding would use that, but then increase the strength to extensible. So that is my proposal. And I'm expecting to get some feedback on that proposal.
Yep. Danielle's been going to town in the chat. So if there's the
I
hand,
may as
Danielle.
well, start now.
Go forward.
I have different perspectives around base and core because they do different things. Base needs to be maintained as the widest possible set of things that we deem would be acceptable. So if we do this, we would say it's not acceptable or preferred to send discharge summary code. This does not work for base in the way that base is modeled and how it's used. It's a different question for core because there we're talking about a directly implementable specification with obligations. So I do not support the direct binding in base. I think Brett put in the chat, maybe it's an additional binding with some context. I think that sounds reasonable. And I think in core, the question for me is when does it migrate from an additional binding to a direct binding? I would be happy to support it at least an additional binding with the purpose of candidate, which says we think this is a candidate for replacing the current preferred binding. And is it acceptable for us to do that at level of preferred? Now, if we do that, we're going to annoy every single IG author that doesn't do patient summary. And everyone who uses FHIR Validator or Inferno who doesn't do patient summary. Because everyone who does a composition that does AU Core, if we put this as extensible, will throw a warning if it doesn't use our code. That sounds like a lot of noise to me. So I'm a bit worried about that because we know it's not the entire ecosystem. I'm, if we can't extend it beyond the one code, I'd prefer it stays in an additional binding for core rather than putting it as an extensible because of just how much trouble that is going to cause for Inferno, for My Health Record on Fire, for example, if that gets up and running, that has different document types, for Wound to Encounter Record and everything else, that it's just going to keep throwing all these warnings of, you haven't said this was a patient summary.
So do you have an example in AU Core where you're using these additional bindings?
Yeah, all our vital signs, because
Vital
the
signs?
candidate ones that we said were to, we moved the restriction of the metric values, the units, into a candidate binding. So that's one. I th and have allowed people to send empirical. Um,
I'm not
but
seeing anything rendering in there. Oh,
in body
here's a better
height,
one.
oh,
Here's a
sorry,
better one.
body weight.
So I'll turn off the obligations to. I can't. Why can I not turn off
I'll see if I
obligations?
can find it.
So here's one here. We've got additional bindings around RCPA and the like.
Oh yeah, those are component bindings rather than candidate bindings. And I think this is a candidate because what we're essentially saying is we are going to build this up to replace the conformant binding. But I don't think one code I think is just going to annoy everybody in implementation. When they try to use validation, it's just going to be incredibly annoying.
Okay, so basically what it would look like using this as an example is that the binding would remain as it currently is in core.
Yeah.
And it would be a preferred binding, so it would be the fire document types code. And then we would have an additional binding that would be defined in AU base. The additional binding would also be added in additional base as a candidate, and then that would basically come through into AU core, inherited from AU core as an
Yeah.
additional binding.
And I can share my screen if you, or I can try to link you to it. It is in body weight, body height. It's just in a particular thing. So I can try to share my screen. You'll have to stop sharing first.
I got body weight if that helps.
Yeah, go down to units. So it's value, and then it's under, hang on, where is it again? Code. Body weight code.
Okay, that one
So
there.
you can see there's an additional binding of saying metric. And there's above the binding preferred, which includes empirical and metric. And what the feedback was during ballot from a bunch of multinational implementers was, oh, that's a bit restrictive, thank you. But we didn't want to lose that metric was how we do this in Australia, and we would like to move to being clear that we only want to exchange metric. So we moved it to a candidate additional binding. So it shows up like that.
What are the other options and the purposes?
Oh, there's like 8 of them, 9 of them. Um, I think candidate is what we're going for, which is to say that we would candidate is the thing you use when you say I want to replace the main binding. That's what the purpose of candidate means. There are minimal and maximal, there's preferred, there's extensible, there's oh God, there's component, which is what the RCPA ones because they are components used where they are parts of the main binding. So if we've split the main binding up into 4 parts and we want to declare what those 4 parts are used for, so that's what component does. But yeah, that's candidate. That's what I would say that we should do with it.
And the whole reason we're doing this is to avoid warnings when someone uses a code other than the one that's in the extensible set.
Because I don't, yes. Well, also, one code isn't enough. One code doesn't say these are all the things shared. Because otherwise, again, in terms of extensible, That's a hard call when it only has one code in it, when we know we want to share things like discharge summaries and a whole bunch of other things. Like, I don't think one code is sufficient to go to ballot and say this is a binding worth extensibility. I don't think it is.
Okay.
We've only got 2 minutes left.
Yeah, I was just going to say that as well. So how do we progress this? I mean, I'm willing to sort of take a motion maybe from you, Danielle, or unless we've got no time to do that.
I guess so we can avoid so I think we're motioning creating a value set, which is AU Fire document type codes.
Hmm.
And then what I want this to be is to have this as an additional binding on composition type with the purpose of candidate.
Okay.
Was that your motion?
That's my motion. So I want to create a new value set of AU Fire type, AU Fire document type codes with the code for patient summary, and to have it as an additional binding as candidate on composition type.
I'm happy to second that.
Okay. We have a motion. We have a second. Do we have anyone else who wants to raise anything or ask any questions on that before I launch a poll or vote?
I think we need to leave it for next time. We might need to look for other additional candidates as well first. What we want to put in.
We do have a motion and we do have a second, so we will launch the vote. But you can vote negative if you're not comfortable with this moving forward at this point. That doesn't mean we can't come back to it. This means we're not comfortable moving forward at this time.
If I could just respond to Talwinder, I think what you could ask for in a second meeting is to add codes to it. So once we go, we're going to establish a value set with at least one code, then it becomes what other codes do we add?
But that's AU base business.
Yes, that's true. We will have to take this to AU base because we do not publish terminology in AU Core, but that doesn't mean we can't discuss it in AU Core just like we have now. And then send the codes that if there are any codes that Talwinder is interested in establishing there, we can discuss them in this work group and then send them onto base.
Yeah. In addition to it, I'm also looking for something like there can be the documents or summaries which are at a point of time, or which can never be updated. And the others are the documents which can be updated. So we might be looking into if we can differentiate those as well.
Don't think that's the purpose of type.
Just noting we're at time. We're either going to have to launch the vote now or come back to this.
I think we launched the vote if Talwinder, you're satisfied that we can add on to this value set as we agree that there are additional document types that we would use in Australia.
There will be some transfer summaries.
And we're not constraining, so we're not preventing you from using others, given this approach, using the additional binding.
Yeah, let's take it in the next meeting. We can go for the vote. Yeah, that's fine.
Okay. I'll launch this vote. If you're not comfortable, you can vote negative. We've got a fair number of votes here, so I'll end it in 3, 2, 1. In the poll, we have 9 plus 1 in the chat, 10 affirmative, 1 negative, and 8 abstain. So the motion has passed. We can look to any additional things we want to change in the next meeting. I'll very quickly wrap up. Given we're over time, I'll share just for the next what's coming up. We have document reference information session tomorrow. Oh, hang on. I need to press the share button. We have a document reference information session tomorrow. And then we have a diagnostic report information session on the 24th of April. Our next AU Core work group meeting on the 30th of April. We have agenda items for document reference and diagnostic report, continuing document reference, and then diagnostic report, and then another diagnostic report information session on the 8th of May, and continuing these proposals through there. So thank you, everyone. We've gone a tiny bit over time, but thanks for everyone staying. We'll see you at the information sessions and next work group meetings.
Thank you, Michael.
Thanks, Michael.
I need to stop sharing. I can find the window.
Recording.
Yeah, I'm going to end the recording. I can't find.
You can't find the recording button.